Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm here to do an author's backlist video for Michael Cunningham. I first read Michael Cunningham years ago, coming across him, I think as many people did, after his book The Hours won the Pulitzer, and it was turned into a movie starring the likes of Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman and Julianne Moore. And then in later years, I've read his more recently published novel, in fact, his latest published novel, The Snow Queen, which I think I read around the time that I got his short story collection from the National Book Festival, and I thought it was funny in a way. The Snow Queen is a literary fiction realist story, but these short stories he published the year before in A Wild Swan and Other Tales are retellings of fairy tales, so what do you know? But I put that book, which I got signed at the National Book Fest, on my shelves for years, as you do when you accumulate way too many books. And then I found two of his more recent books at my library's used bookstore and bought them, and they also stayed on my shelves for way too long until last December I decided I should bite the bullet and read these three books. And now I'm sitting here to review them, although I'll also have links down below to the other two reviews that I did for The Hours and for The Snow Queen. This is just going to be kind of rambly and off the cuff, I guess. I've been having difficulties, I think, getting into booktubing this year. So I'm just going to be a casual and just ramble what comes. The first book I read of his this month, or last month, was A Wild Swan and Other Tales. These are fairy tale retellings, and he talked way back when in his National Book Fest chat that he did with the illustrator about how, you know, he was kind of going back and forth like between like a contemporary vibe and a fairy tale vibe, and you can definitely tell that in the stories. Like, you know, he really takes that, you know, liberty to just sort of be in both worlds. Like, you know, he tells the story of the witch who pushes Hansel and Gretel into the oven. But it starts out as imagining her as a very, like, contemporary character, like a woman who became a cougar who didn't settle down with the rest of her generation. But then it ends, of course, with her being shoved into an oven, which, you know, is more likely to happen in a fairy tale setting, at least, you know, the way that it goes in the story. And I liked these. They were interesting. It was certainly very different than what I expect from Michael Cunningham, who's a literary fiction writer and doesn't really get into the speculative as much. But in here he did, and I appreciated them. I thought that, you know, it was an interesting take because he basically took heroes to account and questioned their actions. Like a lot of these heroes, like Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, are kind of dickish. Like, you know, why did Jack need to keep stealing from the giant after a while? I mean, what sort of person does that? Of course, I guess that goes into how I think in traditional fairy tales, you know, when people are othered, you can kind of keep abusing them as much as you want, and the heroes are always the good guys. But, you know, Cunningham takes another spin on that, and then he looks at villains like Rumpelstiltskin and gives them more backstory. So, you know, it's something that's pleasing if you just sort of want to see another angle and are tired of the moralizing of maybe the traditional fairy tales, or what we know of them anyway. I mean, I don't think this is still not what I'm going to like think of as a Michael Cunningham book exactly, but it was interesting. This to me feels like the pinnacle Michael Cunningham book, By Nightfall, which he published in 2010, which, you know, I guess the reason I'm saying that is because it kind of reminds me of The Snow Queen, but I like this a lot better than I remember liking that one. This is kind of a slight novel, taking place over just a few months, and looking at the lens of a few characters within those few months, and getting really a good feel of who they are as people. And exploring issues of midlife crisis and ennui and malaise and, you know, questioning your relationships and all that sort of thing. This all comes from the main character of the novel, who is this 40-something man called Peter, who is an art dealer living in New York with his wife, Rebecca, who's an editor. This to me feels like pinnacle Michael Cunningham characters, maybe because of The Hours too, because so many of those characters are writers and editors and, you know, socialite kind of people almost. And he's going about his life. He's not very happy, I think, in a way. Like, there's just I mean, he's not like in a crisis, but it's just not going that great as he's growing older. He's feeling kind of stuck in his career, and his daughter's estranged, and he has kind of mixed feelings about where her life has ended up. And then, I guess with his wife, it's just sort of, you know, just they're kind of stagnant in their relationship. And on top of all of that, his much younger brother-in-law, Mizzy, Ethan, but he's called Mizzy for mistake because he's so young that his parents were shocked to have him, comes to stay with them for a while, and he's going through more of a quarter-life crisis of trying to find himself. He just returned from Japan, in fact, like, you know, trying to meditate and decide what to do next. Like, you know, his parents want him to go to law school or do something really, you know, prestigious like that, and he's bucking against it, and who does he want to be? And so he's kind of hiding out with his sister and her husband. But he is this, for all of his faults of, you know, not having a place to go professionally, he's this Adonis-like young man who's bisexual, so I guess he's open to both genders. I kept thinking throughout the novel, if it was published a little later, maybe Cunningham would have made him pansexual. I mean, maybe that's the sort of queerness he's dealing with, because queerness is definitely a big part of this novel, because part of it deals with Peter's attraction to Mizzy. Otherwise, he's, you know, feeling perfectly straight, and in fact, part of the attraction is even that Mizzy looks a little bit like Rebecca did back in the day. But it's about that porous sort of queer identity, but mostly it's about, I think, desire, you know, and how Mizzy sort of presents that for Peter. And I gotta say, the way that Cunningham wrote Mizzy, I think I even was finding him kind of attractive, which is unusual for me. I don't usually do that, but I don't know, you know, he's just so hot without trying. And he's just sort of, you know, living off of everyone else's goodwill to a certain extent, but otherwise is unsure of himself. But and anyway, that kind of like gets to the crux of, you know, there's not a lot of plot to this novel, but, you know, the climax and the drama comes from the fact that Mizzy kind of uses people, and he uses Peter to get his way. You know, he's doing drugs, which Peter found out that he was doing, and Mizzy didn't want him to tell anybody, so, you know, you could work this attraction angle, that sort of thing. But overall, you know, it's, you know, this is a very literary. It's not going to be a favorite for a lot of people, but for me, I think it delved into those issues enough of identity and ennui and personal crisis and desire, and I really enjoyed it. And it feels kind of the opposite of this final novel by Cunningham that I've read, Flesh and Blood, which I said was his second published novel. Actually, I think it's his third published novel in '95. And it's a sprawling book that takes place over 100 years, though technically it really only covers 30 to 40 of those years in detail. And so instead of getting a slice of life about a couple of characters, we're getting, you know, several characters throughout the generations of this one family, the Stassos family. Konstantin Stassos is an immigrant from Greece who arrives in the 40s to America and marries an Italian-American girl. They're very working class, and he basically gets involved in a business of starting up like runner houses, like, you know, sort of rundown houses that people can move into who are, you know, lower class and but can, you know, kind of afford something a little shoddy. And they have 3 kids, 2 daughters and 1 son. And the kids all, you know, are Americanized in their own ways, while Billy comes out and ultimately realizes that he's gay, and it's tied into a lot of tension with his father, because his father can be abusive and doesn't really know how to be emotionally available at all, and so they have an incredibly fraught relationship that also deals with the fact that Billy feels very different emotionally than his father. And then Susan, the oldest daughter, is kind of like a I don't know, she's kind of like the good girl, and part of the reason she runs and gets married immediately after high school is because her father's kind of suffocating her and relying on her a lot. And there's sort of a sexual tinge to it a little bit, which is uncomfortable. And I'm thinking it's probably is just talking about the idea of attraction to youth and vitality and that sort of thing. But Susan runs to a promising high school boyfriend, and on the surface they have a happy life. It's not quite so great underneath, but it's kind of happy. Well, it's content. And then finally, the youngest daughter, Zoe, also gets more involved in the queer lifestyle. She's also somebody who doesn't settle into a career or a marriage, and does a lot of drugs, but she meets a lot of interesting people along the way, including a drag queen named Cassandra. And when Zoe ends up getting pregnant, she and Cassandra more or less raise her son Jamal together. But Zoe actually ends up getting AIDS. An interesting taken away because, you know, Billy is the gay man involved in gay relationships in, you know, the 80s, but yeah, maybe this is a bit of a twist to look at AIDS from the POV of drug users, and to remember that obviously some members of the gay community survived. And I think Billy and Constantine and their relationships are the ones that are the strongest realized. I think that's the thing about the sprawling epic of a book. There's too many characters, there's too much to cover, so some of them are a little more flat. I feel like Zoe and Jamal were a little too enigmatic for my tastes. And then, you know, we're getting into the later generations, and we have Susan's son, and he's very much involved in the climax. And I understand his internal drama, because he's also someone dealing with queer identity, and he's from the most conservative sort of Republican branch of the family, and so he really doesn't know how to deal with that. But the climax is external conflict, and I feel like it's a little too much for me. You know, I'm just somebody who, when too many convenient external things happen, I just go, eh, which is perhaps part of the reason why I give so much of a pass or love so much books like By Nightfall, where plot is so secondary. And for this one, where Cunningham says, oh, a plotty thing is going to happen, I'm like, can you back this up? Is it really verifiable? Is it something that would actually happen, or is it too many conveniences? So I thought it was a little too dramatic, but that's my take. I thought, overall though, I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed following the characters. I do feel like one thing Cunningham was really great at in this book is exposition. It's so difficult to explain things in novels without it diving into mediocrity and into, you know, bashing your readers over the head, or not putting in enough, you know, actual interesting character moments or dialogue, and, you know, telling the reader everything is not a good thing. But when he put the exposition in this book, I felt like it really worked, or at least I was impressed. I really like him as a writer, and I guess even this is the earliest book of his I've read so far, and it was there even then. So that makes me pretty hopeful. Because I do plan to go back and do a second author backlist video for Michael Cunningham, because I have 3 more books of his that I haven't yet read, including his 2 earliest ones. I think he's perhaps the most private about those. You know, I feel like authors sometimes, you know, when their careers start in one place and end in another, it's like you don't want to look at the old work where, you know, you're a little rougher around the edges. But anyway, that's just my take from, I don't know, brief research into that topic, but I'm going to read them anyway if I can find them. I'm not sure quite when, because even though we're at the very beginning of 2022, as usual, I've loaded myself up with a lot of TBR, so there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be already reading throughout the year, and hopefully looking forward to. Hopefully they'll all be really great. And I will keep some room for some form of spontaneity, including, I think, with my next video. You'll see me imminently on this channel again to do my first page 112 tag of the year, which is very exciting. I very much enjoy doing those videos. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say here and now. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Hope your nostalgia for December and your beginning reading for 2022 is going well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.